Issue 36. This issue immediately starts out right in the middle of the action, with the freedom fighters traveling in a crazy dimension and then being faced with a menacing night creature. And I checked, and I didn't skip any issues before this. The Knuckles miniseries is after this. So, huh? Oh, it turns out they aren't traveling in it yet, as Rotor explains that they're all looking at live pictures beamed to them from a camera he had sent into the Zone of Silence first. That was a confusing beginning then. And to reveal that when Sonic was traveling in negative reality, he wasn't in the Zone of Silence at all, but a different dimension from where King Acorn was. Then Rotor uses another invention to discover that the magnetic fields of Robotropolis are off the dial, and Eggman is playing around with some serious power. Like Chaos Emeralds? How is this new? And because of his readings, Rotor suspects that whatever Eggman is doing is having an effect on the zone where King Acorn is in. Sonic rushes into Eggman's base and ties up Snively before he's about to do something. By the way, I just yesterday heard that apparently Snively's name is actually pronounced Snively, which is a fucking stupid pronunciation that I'm just never going to use. It sounds like he has a cold, and he has the sniffles. So I'm gonna keep calling him Snively because that's what I'm used to, and besides, it sounds more evil, and it's a part of my identity as someone who didn't grow up watching Sadie M and whatnot, who logically would have not heard his name actually spoken. From the outsider's perspective, that's probably what one would assume he's called. So fuck it, I'm making it my trademark. He's Snively. Anyways, Eggman yells at Sonic for what he's done, and after missing a shot at him, he sees Sonic cause his machine to explode. Unfortunately, what Robotnik was in the middle of doing was trying to save his world. So this was a Lost World Sonic kicks the conch away scenario, which I saw coming the minute Robotnik told him, "Do you know what you've done?" I like this because it makes perfect sense that someone as quick acting as Sonic would make that mistake, and even more sense that someone of his ego would just argue with Eggman instead of blaming himself and feeling terrible for it. Why did Eggman call himself a benevolent ruler when he's portrayed as being somehow knowingly evil and proud of it? Anyways, Eggman tells a story about right before he'd come to power. Good, more backstory on him. I'm guessing this won't explain why he's evil though, because fuck priorities. He says he had been examining what was left to him by his mentor and says that Kudos was just about to overthrow the king when he had disappeared. His mentor was a guy named Kudos? Or Kodos, I guess? Well, it makes more sense than Uncle Chuck being the mentor. Kudos had to develop some things for keeping law and order over people, which Eggman took advantage of. One of which was his Zone of Silence, which he trapped the king in, instead of roboticizing him or killing him. And then an interesting revelation is made that the zone was actually more like a force of nature that would keep on growing, merging with whatever existed around it on different energy levels, and had tried to suck everyone in like a black hole. This is a lot more interesting than it just being a portal to another dimension, that's it. His photon cannon would only thwart its attempt for as long as it kept working. Eggman naturally decided that he must destroy the zone before it would consume and devour Mobius. Honestly, I like this, the shoot the dog to do the right thing situation that Eggman would naturally go for if he was even doing the right thing at all. It's kind of confusing how Snively says, "Well, but what about the king?" as if he's concerned about the person he just gladly helped to overthrow. But I do like the idea that he used to be more innocent until years of working with Eggman made him apathetic and selfish and corrupted him until he was just as much of a monster as Eggman. So, why is it that only now it's Eggman trying to destroy the Zone of Silence if he's had it and worried about it for such a long time? After Eggman sends Sonic away to do the dirty work for him without him knowing it, we see Sonic with the freedom fighters in front of a device, and Rotor says it's an energy inhibitor which should only be used as a last resort for some reason. Sonic recommends that they don't use it at all. I guess he wants to try to be cautious for once after his impulsiveness caused the problem to happen, because otherwise this seems out of character for him. All the freedom fighters at once go into the Zone of Silence, because why not, and float around. While Nicole isn't with them, which makes sense because the last time she tried to do something like this, it was messing with her software in a way we'll never get to see now. I like how they have Sally point out that when you switch from walking to floating, it can feel jarringly disorienting. I like how they actually thought of that. The freedom fighters meet up with a giant knight telling them to surrender for some reason. And Sonic runs in a circle to create a tornado to destroy his troops, and Sally pushed him off his horse in an action girl moment to keep him from shooting at Sonic. Wait, I thought he was a giant. No, he's not. And this is gonna get her kidnapped, isn't it? He then knocks Sally out for not having the stomach to finish off her opponent, even though she didn't even get the chance to try. Why is that her fault? And then it's revealed he's King Acorn, who doesn't recognize who they are or who he is. In desperation, Sonic, I guess he used the energy inhibitor? He clicked open something, saving the freedom fighters from the Zone of Silence after he grabbed a lifeline shot by Rotor. Sonic shows up in front of Rotor while helping a dazed Sally stand, but King Acorn is still trapped in the Zone of Silence. And the story just ends right then and there, to be fortunately continued later. This was certainly an interesting story. And the next story has Knuckles continue where he left off, telling us about Dimitri's origin. We see Dimitri saying that conquering the world for no reason at all wouldn't have been worth the effort without those who had tried to thwart him in attendance. I see he's a James Bond villain, I assume. And we get a stupid line that the elite deemed the Chaos Siphon was too dangerous, but the facts have proven me right. It was blatantly obvious that it was dangerous because him using it led to very bad things, including him having very dangerous powers to begin with. How delusional is he? Dimitri says happily that he's not the same person he was before, that he's an immortal living Chaos Emerald now. Interesting concept. Rather than being sad at what his brother said. He then says dismissively that people always think their superiors are mad. Yeah, right, because every office worker thinks that their boss is clinically insane. This guy really is delusional. And again, why would the Chaos Emeralds think they could get anything out of making him into this completely different, dangerous person? Dimitri brags that he had gotten some robots reprogrammed to make the civilians work for him. Okay, so there were robots in Echidnapolis. So why the hell didn't Dimitri just tell a robot to siphon energy from the Chaos Emeralds to avoid any risks himself in the first place? Plus, taking over a civilization with robots makes him more similar to Eggman, only he's magical and doesn't roboticize people. It makes him less unique. Dimitri then says that he'll use sails on the island to make it traverse the globe in inexplicable world domination efforts. Basically taking advantage of the fact that it's a floating island once again, to use it as a war machine. Although again, this is another thing Eggman basically tried to do before, so it makes him more similar to Eggman again. Dimitri brags that only the walls of his fortress, which were created with his power, can resist his might. And then his brother says, except for fire ants, and the wall collapses, freeing everyone who is chained to it because the ants have eaten into the tower's foundation, causing it to collapse. Okay, I think what happened was that Dimitri accidentally hit ants with his power while hitting the fortress with it because the ants were on the walls, which strengthened the ants to the point where they'd be able to munch through solid walls. That's pretty interesting. And it's sweet that Dimitri's brother tried to help him escape from the collapsing fortress, showing that he still cares about him, even apologizing after he seems to disappear in a pink fog. What's he apologizing for? I guess he blamed himself for everything that happened. But seriously, disappears in a pink fog? What happened here? They realize that they owe their continued future to the ants, the humblest of God's creatures? What the fuck? Why the hell are they mentioning the Judeo-Abrahamic God as something fucking Sonic related? I could tell that this was a line that was written by someone who momentarily forgot they were written for the Sonic franchise. Because this is extremely out of place and takes you out of the story, dragging you back into harsh reality. Dimitri seems to get over blaming himself for his brother's inexplicable demise pretty fast, and say that nothing could have prevented it from happening. Aside from, forcing your brother to use a robot to absorb the Chaos Emeralds. He couldn't have known working on the Chaos Siphon with him would have led to all this, so that's not really his fault. And he couldn't have kept him from going to the Emerald. He didn't have the guts to try to imprison him or anything. The judge guy goes to the insane conclusion that science is completely to blame for what has happened. Yeah, science, and not Dimitri. Totally science. At least it does make perfect sense that a guy looking like this would be the kind of old-fashioned, science-hating old coot who would preach such nonsense. Especially after saying something as religious as God's creatures. It's because of this that they started having a guardian for the Emerald of the Island in the first place. That's another thing! Why the hell didn't they have it be guarded to begin with? Another thing that was to blame for Dimitri. Not science. Did the writer even recognize this? I like how Knuckles says that his ancestors couldn't bring themselves to deny society's achievements, and they're showing them using cars. So good, maybe people still use them. Only for Knuckles to say that they didn't use them. That they gathered examples of their ancient scientific culture and buried them in an underground city. Again, this is bullshit. How much and which technology was arbitrarily abandoned anyways? Did everyone give up their life-saving medical technology and air conditioning and indoor plumbing too? I can't imagine they would. I can understand a small minority of extremists going through with this, but logically the vast majority of the society would have refused to give up their modern conveniences and separated from the tribe using the very flying cars that people would try to cause to be buried. They would be told to bury those cars and would instead fly away with them. I've heard of a race of advanced echidnas later on in the comic that would love technology, so this better be the explanation for them. Because no society ever would be able to have every single person and all at once agree to abandon technology. This is like an 80-year-old conservative's dream. Knuckles then realizes that Archimedes' headquarters might be that very same underground city where all that technology was abandoned. So finally something comes out of all that monologue about the past, as Knuckles' present goals moved along. The main story was written by just Ken Penders, while the Knuckles story was both Mike Kantarovich and Ken Penders. That's backwards. The main story was some pretty interesting lore and backstory, explaining that the Zone of Silence's portal is more than just a portal, but also a black hole, and explaining that King Acorn naturally went insane from being forced to live in the Zone of Silence for so long. How is he getting his food and water and toilet paper? I can imagine a king used to being spoiled with luxury would take that pretty hard. But again, they failed to explain why the hell he just threw him into the Zone of Silence instead of outright killing him. Unless it just guessed that Snively's innocence back then was causing Robotnik to hold back for his sake. I like the story though, I can't wait to see it resolved. But the Knuckles story was just frustrating. While it did teach us some new information, showing us Dimitri's inexplicable evil plot, it just had Dimitri magically poof out of existence in the laziest Deus Ex Machina ever. At least that's what it looked like anyways. So that wasn't a very satisfying ending. And again, I'm really expected to believe all echidnas were perfectly fine abandoning all technology. Was it really all technology? And was it really all echidnas? Well, they never explicitly stated it was all of the echidnas, but it implied it at the time. At least Knuckles finally figures out where he needed to go to save his friends, but still, I'm not disappointed. Next up is the infamous Knuckles miniseries. And again, I didn't think the previous miniseries were the worst thing ever. I'm interested to see what that'll be like, at least.